Hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to AWS User Group Coimbatore session today. I I would like to welcome Sanchit Jain for accepting our request and how presenting a session today. An intro about Sanchit. He's a certified expert on AWS and he's an APN ambassador. He comes with 6+ years of experience in designing, building, and distribution applications on AWS. He has sound knowledge of most AWS services and extensive experience on setting up a secure and distributed platform on AWS using infrastructure as a code. And today topic is more closely towards that. And I feel like all of you will have a great time today. With that said, I would like to welcome Sanchit on this show. Welcome,
Thank you.
Sanchit.
Thanks, Raghav. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for spending out some wonderful time from your weekend and joining this wonderful session on CloudFormation, a service which I pretty much have worked like almost throughout my career, and always happy to give it or deliver a session about it. Please feel free if you have any queries, please raise it on the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So as Raghav mentioned, hope my screen is visible. Yep. As Raghav mentioned, today's session is going to be AWS CloudFormation. We'll understand in detail like what is exactly CloudFormation, why do we need the service, what are the different internal working about it, different functionalities, features, and backed by a couple of good hands-on sessions. So by the end of the session, by this end of an hour, you guys not only understand what is CloudFormation and feature, but also if you want to try this out at your end, you can easily do it. Just want to call out the presentation for this session as well as any sorts of CloudFormation script I will execute. I'll upload in the GitHub repo, and the link I'll share with Raghav, so you can forward it with all of you guys so you can try out at your end. So today's agenda is going to be why we need CloudFormation, what is CloudFormation, how it works, concepts, and then a couple of demos around it so we understand, as I mentioned, in and out, not just the theoretical part of it. Let me quickly get through my introduction. My name is Sanchit. I work as a lead architect Quantify, pretty much an APN ambassador, as well as if you have any queries around how to start your journey with cloud or AWS, or what exactly you should focus, any career related queries, anything where you need my help from community standpoint, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or even GitHub. I'll be happy to help you out as far as possible. Don't hesitate to reach out to me on that. Starting towards our session, CloudFormation, right? So first, let's understand why we need CloudFormation rather than what is exactly the CloudFormation is, right? It's very important that we understand why exactly we need CloudFormation, or what exactly it provides you on table before we go and understand the theoretical part of it.
Sanchit,
So
one
first,
second. The presentation is not visible, I think. Uh, can you check once?
one sec. Give me a minute. Let me share again. Is my screen visible now?
Yes, it's visible now. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for that, Raghav. So yeah, uh, before we start with the actual CloudFormation introduction, definition, features, and all, let's start from why. Why we need CloudFormation, right? Or what exactly CloudFormation provide to us. That's why it's become a very prominent tool. Whenever you talk about AWS, CloudFormation, I mean, irrespective whether you're working on machine learning use case, you're working on data lake, you're working on a serverless, cloud formation is always talk of the town as a integral part of any solution what you build, right? What exactly and why it is so famous about it. So let's learn from that why perspective. First, support for different resources, right? So when I talk about the cloud formation perspective, it supports all the possible of AWS resources. So if you talk about, let's say, S3, if you talk about EC2, if you talk about like complex like EMR or SageMaker, Those all different kinds of, right, from simple to complex kinds of services you can automate via CloudFormation. That's one. As well as if you have some other custom resources which you want to execute sitting on-prem or some other cloud or some other platform, that also you can do it with the CloudFormation. So it supports all different possible ways of resources, right? That's point one. Point two, it is very easy to use, right? So it's gives you different other mediums. You can design your own template using JSON and YAML. There are some other ways also where you can have write CloudFormation. Let's say you're not pretty much into DevOps kind of it. You comes from a software engineering perspective and you want to deploy CloudFormation. There are other ways like AWS CDK, SAM, and those kinds of other stuffs are there. Where CDK via which you can, with the help of your Angular, React, TypeScript, Java, Python, you can design the CloudFormation template, right? So there are multiple easier way to do that. The syntax are very flexible and declarative, right? It exactly works. So if you come from any programming background, right, whether irrespective of Java, Python, there is a thumb rule in a programming language that you break down your code, modularize it, so it becomes very easily readable and those kinds of stuff. Some or other way, those concepts applies in CloudFormation also, right? The syntax are very declarative, very flexible. You can easily identify, you can read it. It's module by module, and each module is what somewhere you try to define like a one single resource where you define, okay, this is a resource, this is how you configure this resource, this is how you deploy it, right? So it's very flexible and declarative. You can customize it, right? However, in any programming language we pass the runtime parameter, we try to make it more generic so you can reuse it across your programs and application. Same is the concept of CloudFormation, right? You try to make your template so generic enough that it's not that you again reuse it. For sure, you can reuse again, but you can reuse different accounts or different regions, right? Let's say, for example, you have a kind of a CloudFormation template which deploys an EC2 instance. Now you don't want to write again and again, right? Let's say you write for Mumbai, then you write for, let's say, US North Virginia, then you write for Canada, or then for UK, right? You won't do that. You will like, okay, how many CloudFormation I need to maintain? So that's exactly is the concept of customizing through parameters. We'll learn in detail in upcoming slides how you can do it, what are the different features. But that's one of the functionality that provides that you write one single template and deploy across all the regions globally if that resources are supported in that region. So that is what customization through parameters. The last is a drag and drop through UI, right? As I mentioned earlier also, let's say you don't come from a DevOps perspective, or let's say even you don't even come from any programming language, right? You don't know what is Python, Java, or TypeScript. Still, you know the AWS language, you know different resources, you know what configuration it is. You can easily use drag and drop console, which is called as CloudFormation Designer, which is there in AWS console itself. You can leverage that UI to visually drag and drop, configure the resources without any knowledge of the JSON, YAML, or any programming language, right? So these are the five CloudFormation is very famous in the market or very flexible for any kinds of audiences, and why it has been renowned in the market, right? Now let's move to the understanding it. What is CloudFormation? So we understood why we need it. Now let's understand what is exactly the CloudFormation part of it, right? So CloudFormation, if you talk about CloudFormation, I simply describe it in few words. You want to manage your resources, you want to provision your resources, you want to version it, and you want to track it. If you need this four kind of functionality, then exactly is the CloudFormation, right? So very simple of it. You want to deploy an EC2 instance, right? So you want to create EC2 instance, you want to maintain EC2 instance, maintain in terms of if there are any updates on infrastructure and those kinds of stuff, or you want to track which EC2 instance was launched from CloudFormation, right? If you want to do that kind of stuff in a very sequential order, then CloudFormation is a go-to example, right? So that's exactly is what CloudFormation is. AWS CloudFormation provides user a simple way to create, manage a collection of AWS resources by provisioning, updating them in an order and predictable way. Now, the example which I gave was very precisely was for EC2 instance. Just think of it when you're working in a large scale enterprise application, it's not going to be just EC2, right? Bare minimum, it's going to be 10, 15 different resources, different types of resources, as well as the configuration, the dependencies will differ based on application. You will not love to do that manually, just having documenting it thoroughly, wiring that up. Still, there will be a chance of making those mistakes. There exactly CloudFormation simplify that. Whatever effort you put in documentation, even if you put half of it on the CloudFormation, that becomes your cookbook or your deployment scripts going forward without any chance of error if you have properly test that out once. Now, if you see that same image, right? These are the multiple different, let's say, sample of examples of resources which you want to deploy on the left-hand side. It's really painful who's connected to what, where exactly which one will be deployed in VPC, what security group, what is the name of those resources, too many kinds of wiring and complexity. Whereas if we talk about on the right-hand side with help of CloudFormation, you see it is like a package that provision all the resources, figure out the dependencies or kind of dependencies what they have internally between each other, and deploy in a very orderly and predictable fashion. We'll understand in detail how are those dependencies, how AWS takes care, CloudFormation takes care in managing those dependencies and deploying in a sequential manner. But for now, this is a simpler one that if you want to deploy multiple resources, you want to create and manage it, then CloudFormation is a go-to tool for that. This is one of the example. Expedia is just like an online booking platform which uses CloudFormation. This is not the one of them. CloudFormation I've been personally been using from almost like 6 years now. CloudFormation is almost there, I think, from 2015 perspective by reInvent. So there are multiple companies. I won't say very few of company are not using CloudFormation. Most of the 90% of the companies are using CloudFormation because that's very good service and help you to automate or simplify the entire deployment process of your platform. Now let's exactly understand in a zoom in view that what things are required when you want to work on a CloudFormation, right? So there are three perspectives what you need: a template, CloudFormation service on the AWS console, and the stack. Template is kind of a cookbook, as I mentioned, where you define in a JSON or an YAML what kind of resources you want to deploy, what is a dependency configuration it is, right? You code that. That's why it is called as infrastructure as a code. So this template is nothing but this infrastructure as a code, that in a form of the infrastructure what you need, you define in a form of a code in a JSON or YAML format, and you save it in a template. This template is then executed by CloudFormation service, and then the executed version of template is called as a stack, which is nothing but a package of all the resources which you have defined in your template in an executable version, or which is already provisioned in your AWS account. The entire package is called as AWS stack. Now we'll understand in detail what exactly is template, what syntax it is, or what kind of operation you can do for template, CloudFormation, and stack. But for now, simple of three things you need when it comes to CloudFormation: a template, CloudFormation service, and stack. Moving towards the next, right? And going some in detail how exactly. So far we understood in the previous slide, very layman language, what is CloudFormation. But if I try to zoom in a bit from a technical perspective, what is in CloudFormation? First, all the resources required by a user and application can be deployed using template. As I mentioned, it supports all the resources what you need. All resources what are there in AWS console, you can some or other way automate via CloudFormation. Second, you can reuse the template. As we were talking about customizing those template and all, you can reuse it. And even that's a best practice, that template, the template what you define, right? The infrastructure as a code. The code which you write has to be reusable in such a fashion that you don't have to rewrite again. Okay, for sure, you can update it, you can maintain it, make a required changes, but it has to be reused across different of your environments within the region in same account, or across regions, or across different accounts. To make reusable templates, there are various features and functionalities are there, as I mentioned in the previous slide. Like you can use parameters, you can use mapping, you can use conditions in the template, so you can customize the stack, right? What are these parameters? What are this mapping? What are this condition? Don't worry about it. When we'll go into the template syntax section, we'll understand in detail within live example how and exactly what are these things about it. But there are functionalities and features provided by AWS CloudFormation itself to make your template more reusable. So these are the 3 points which will help you to understand more in detail what is CloudFormation, why you should make it reuse, and how you should make reuse of that. Now let's understand in detail. So far, I assume that you guys now know basics of it, 5-10%, what is CloudFormation, what is exactly template and all. Now understand in detail process how exactly things work, right? So let's start from the left side. As an user, as a developer, cloud engineer, DevOps engineer, whatever role you define your template, right? Now, template, as I mentioned, is a code where you define your infrastructure in a form of a code, which can be either in YAML or in kind of a JSON format. Then what you do is once your template is ready, the template can be as big as possible. It can be as small as possible. It can be sets nested templates also, right? Like 5, 6 different classes, like how we talk about Java, you have 5 different classes and other kinds of stuff. That also you can do. You can have a kind of a nested or layered stack kind of a thing, 5, 6 different templates, or you have one big template with different modules and all. Irrespective of that, you define your template. Next, you take all of the template and move it into your S3 bucket. Generally, this is an automated process. If you would have heard of like continuous integration, continuous deployment, generally we refer as CI/CD. This takes that template from your code repository and put into S3 bucket. For now, assume that we don't have CI/CD, we are manually uploading in S3 bucket. People may not agree. They're like, okay, hey, I'm locally doing it. I'm not uploading to S3 bucket, right? Let me tell you very clearly. You upload, even if you're trying to deploy it locally from your machine, right? Behind the scene, CloudFormation only reads the template from S3 bucket. I will show you live why I'm telling about that is, even though if you upload locally, CloudFormation takes that template, whatever you have uploaded, put it into a default bucket, which is created. And from that default bucket URL, it spins up the stack. So whenever it's launching or whenever it is deploying the stack, it will refer to the URL of the default bucket, not the file which you have uploaded locally. The file which you uploaded locally automatically goes and save into that default bucket, which you will understand more in detail when we are doing a demo. But remember, CloudFormation always launch a stack with help of a template uploaded in a S3 bucket. Either you do it or CloudFormation will do it on behalf of you. Then you go to the next step. So now you have a template which is there in S3. Then you go to the CloudFormation service. Now CloudFormation service does multiple of things behind the scene. First, it goes and performs all the syntax check around the CloudFormation. That okay, is my all the syntax correct? Whatever the resources you have provided is making sense or not, or what kind of stuff. Two, it tried to create a dependency graph. So in the previous slide, I mentioned about a lot, right? It is in a predictable fashion. It is ensure all the things launch in a sequential manner and all those kinds of stuff. But the important thing to understand is how it is predictable, how it launches the things in a sequential manner. Because whenever you upload a template and when you try to launch a stack, CloudFormation, after performing syntax check, it tried to create a dependency graph of all the resources. What does that mean? Let's say for an example, you have two resources, S3 and Lambda. Now Lambda needs the URI, S3 URI of S3 bucket, whatever operation they need to do. So ideally, if CloudFormation, let's say launch first S3 and let's say it goes and launch first Lambda and then S3, then it's not going to it's going to be a mismatch because Lambda needs an S3 bucket. So that's how whenever whenever CloudFormation try to goes and launch this template, what it will do is it will just read out all the resources, okay, and understand how exactly there is a dependency between the resources. When it start reading around it, it will understand, oh, first I need to launch two resources, S3 and Lambda. Second, I can see that Lambda has a dependency on S3. So first, it will go to the launching of S3. Now, since there are only two resources, that's fine. Let's say even S3 needs an SQS, right? From an event notification perspective. So when it is scanning all the resources, it identifies Lambda needs S3, S3 needs SQS. Now it will go to SQS. Does SQS need anyone? No, SQS doesn't need anyone. So first it will start launching SQS. Then it will launch S3 because now SQS is there. Then it will go to launch in S3. And then at the last, S3, SQS is there, S3 is there. Now it will launch a Lambda. So that kind of dependency is being taken care by the CloudFormation internally. And that's how it ensures that wherever you define, in whatever sequence you define in a template, let's say first you define Lambda, then SQS, then S3, or any sequence, doesn't matter. How the dependency graph is created, based on that, CloudFormation will spin up the different resources. So you might be shocked, right? The way resources have been defined in a template versus the CloudFormation get executed, there is a difference in the sequence and ordering on the console. Don't worry about it. It's because of the dependency graph. right? And at the last, once the CloudFormation template has been it's been launched, the execution version is called as a stack, which is kind of a compiled version, right? As we can see, all the resources what we have defined, S3, Lambda, SQS, all those things in an executable format on the console, which is the live service which is pinned up. That package is together called as a stack. So we had a template on the left side, which we uploaded to S3. Then we had a CloudFormation service, which performs all the check and deploy. And then at the last, what we have is the entire deployed package around it. So this is how internally the entire CloudFormation works. It is so fast that in few seconds, we don't even realize what kind of different operation CloudFormation service has done around it. But do remember that this is how the internal mechanism work around. Now let's understand a couple of operations in detail, right? So we understood there is a template, there's something called as template, something called as CloudFormation and stack. Now let's go zoom in view how exactly you can write template, what are the different features, functionality, how you can write CloudFormation, different operations, and stack around. So CloudFormation template is exactly right. There is no, I mean, ideally, if I talk about in a very layman language, there is no difference. You write any programming, Python programming, Java programming versus you write an infrastructure as a code, right? In JSON YAML. You can do the same cycle. You write a code, you put it into GitLab. Then if there is any change, you pull again, you make the change, you pull again, you make the change, you test, right? Same is the life cycle of designing a template. You take a template, you code something, you deliver it into GitLab, test it. If there is any change required, again, you make that change, deliver, test it, right? It's the same concept around it. There is no difference. That's why it is called as even infrastructure as a code only. Like some or other way you're coding your infrastructure rather than any application in Java. But the life cycle in simple remains exact the same. That you have a kind of a template, which that template you make some changes, you revision that, test that changes, revise that changes. If it is good, you release in prod. If you want to update the template, again, you can do it. And as a part of the template, one important thing is there is, as I mentioned, there is a UI capability which is provided by AWS CloudFormation Designer. That designer helps you not to automatically launch a stack, right? It is only help you to design the template in a drag and drop fashion, right? There are functionalities there that you, from the designer itself, you can upload the template to launch CloudFormation. But designer core functionality or the main functionality is to assist you, to guide you, or to help you to design the CloudFormation template. Only step one, right? When it comes to launching the CloudFormation or maintaining the stack, there is no difference. Like it's a very simple few clicks, but the main part is the designer help you only to define the template. It's not that, okay, you dynamically, I mean, you drag an S3 and behind the scene dynamically an S3 get deployed. No, until and unless you define the entire template and you upload that template, then only CloudFormation will deploy the template. Either you do it via your manual, bring your own kind of template, or you do it via designer, or you do it via programming language. CloudFormation will only deploy it once you upload that template. It goes to S3, and then it will like going to execute it. Now let's understand what are the different features, what are the different functionalities, objects template provides to write a CloudFormation template, right? The infrastructure as a code. So totally, I mean, as I talk about a lot that it supports JSON in a YAML format. Totally, I think there are 9 objects template provides, which are listed as below: format version, description, metadata, parameters, mapping, condition, transform, resources, output, right? Too many things to remember for now. Let's go one by one. So there are 9 total objects which template provides. Let me tell you, out of this 9, the only mandatory thing which you need, let's say if you're very new to CloudFormation, this is a hello world you want to write, you don't have to worry about any of this thing. You have to only worry about the one thing, one particular object, which is the resources. That's the main, right? CloudFormation help you to define the resources. If you don't define your resources, only what CloudFormation is going to write. So that's what resources is the only mandatory section out of this entire 9. The remaining ones are across different categories. Some will help you from a best practice perspective. Some will help you to define the metadata. Some will help you to customize it. I mean, make it more reusable across environments and all. Someone will help you from a tracking perspective. But the only mandatory thing is the resources. Again, As you move forward and you become more mature in CloudFormation and having more expertise in CloudFormation, do ensure all of these 9 objects are very important. For the first few days when you start learning this service, it's okay, you start with resources. But over the period of time, when you start using in your production or actual use case, all of this 9 holds the equivalent importance. Now let's understand in detail how exactly this works, right? So this is a structure, high level structure where you can see in a JSON format or YAML format how exactly the CloudFormation template look like, the basic skeleton of it, right? Now, if we talk about this entire structure, each object by object, let's go and understand, right? So on the left-hand side, we have a very simple EC2 instance, this launch an EC2 instance with a security group and a kind of a output around it. So first, let's understand the first one, which is the version. So version, this is a standard fixed version value what AWS CloudFormation provide, which we have to use around it. The second is a description. Now I give you a CloudFormation template. There are 2 ways you can do it. Either you provide a description, and from description you can say, oh, this CloudFormation, like for example, this CloudFormation launched an EC2 instance running Apache and exposed default page to the internet, hard-coded to work only with US East 1. So it becomes very easy, very simple, without even going through the remaining 40 lines. From this one line itself, I can identify what is being done in this CloudFormation. Let's say this, like how and why this is important is, let's say you have like 200 lines of CloudFormation, like a very big enterprise. It is very difficult that you go object by object, line by line to understand, okay, this is launching Lambda, this is launching SageMaker, this is launching EMR. It becomes very difficult to go through that, right? But if someone describes at the beginning of it, okay, this is going to launch XYZ resources, it's going to work in XYZ condition, and here is the owner, it becomes very easy for you to understand the basic functionality, to identify what are the limitations, as well as to contact the owner about it. So that's how description is very important part of it from a best practice perspective. Second is the parameter. So as I mentioned in the initial, there is something called as parameter mapping condition are used to ensure that CloudFormation stack which you have developed is being customized, right? Customized or reusable. Customized or reusable in the sense is you can make it or design it in such a fashion that it can work across globally all the regions, across multiple accounts. So let's say for an example, how it works generally in real time. In IT industry, when you define, let's say I am a CloudFormation expert, so I will write a CloudFormation which not only works in my account in one region, but similarly when the CI/CD or the DevOps pipeline downloads that template from GitHub, first it should not only work across multiple accounts like development, staging, alpha staging, production, or UAT and all this stuff. It's not only that, it should work, as well as it should also work across different regions. So generally, let's say for example, in production, we have things like disaster recovery, we have like a hub, 2 different regions, active kind of stuff, right? Those all different things what we do when we talk about the enterprise platform deployment, right? It should not only work for one region, it should also work for another region. Let's say the one region is US East 1, which is North Virginia, the famous of all. The second one is, let's say, Ohio. The same template which is working in North Virginia should work in Ohio. Now, it doesn't matter North Virginia, the North Virginia region, what you're using is account A. Ohio, what you're using is an account B or account 2. Doesn't matter. It's in same account, different account. The template has to be very generic that it should work across all the accounts or across the regions. So parameters, condition, and transform help you to do that. Now let's understand in detail what is parameters. Parameters is a runtime value. Let's say you're launching an EC2 instance. I know most of the people on this call would be knowing how to launch an EC2 instance. Now you're launching an EC2 instance, you need to provide an instance type, which can be T2 micro, R4 large, R5 large, M5 large, right? One way is you can for sure hard code into and do it. The second way, you can take it runtime. You can pass as a runtime, hey, here you go, right? Generally, if I take a very simple example in a programming language, you take the input from the user runtime. Buffer reader, you take an input, right? That, okay, user, when you're executing the program, give me the number. Like if I talk about a simple arithmetic operation, you always ask, please enter number 1, please enter number 2, and then you give a output to it. Similarly, is the same concept of parameters. At the runtime, when you're trying to deploy the CloudFormation stack, you, with the help of parameters, accept the value from the user And that value is what user is going to, the CloudFormation is going to use internally. So that is exactly what you provide. In the parameters, let's say you're providing, first you're telling what kind of parameter is it, type is string, default value is T2 micro. In case if user doesn't provide, then default value is this. Allowed values, right? So generally you do range and all those kinds of stuff, then this is an allowed value. Either you can have T2 nano or you can have T2 micro. That's more sophisticated way of doing it, right? Otherwise, user doesn't know that, okay, what kind of value are they expecting around it. So with allow values, you can tell user, okay, from this given range, you can only provide one, whichever from this range. So that way you can do parameters. Mapping, we do have an example, but if I talk about mapping, can be very simple. Let's say generally when you have in dev environment, you launch a small resource like T2 micro, but when you go in production, you launch a scale one like M5X large. Now how you can dynamically switch, because as I mentioned, there is to be only one template across all the environments. So with the help of mapping, you can tell them either based on environment or based on region, you use this sets of configurations, maybe AMI if I talk about a machine image, or if I talk about instance type, those kinds of all stuff you can do with help of mapping along in collaboration with condition. So those about mapping and condition. Transform is more like, okay, it's like apply like a micros kind of thing, right? For an example, let's say you already have some template defined in S3 which you want to import, right? Like generally we do import statement in any programming language. Similarly, what you can do around with the transform. Last, resources, as I mentioned, very mandatory. One of the only section out of those 9 which is mandatory required, where you define the resources, right? From small security group IAM role to a SageMaker kind of stuff. Any resources what you need, that you define in a resources section. You not only just define the resources, you configure the resources. Certain time you even bootstrap the resources. Now, what's the difference between 3 of them is, for an example, if we talk about this sample, here you're just provisioning our resources by EC2. Here you're configuring the resources by telling them, okay, this may be my instance type, this may be my tag, this may be my security group. So that's configuring the resources. At the last, what you're doing is a bootstrapping. Now, bootstrapping means, for an example, now I'm launching an EC2 instance. I'm provisioning an EC2 instance, I'm configuring the EC2 instance. That EC2 instance will have, let's say, Apache server in it. I'm already doing 75% of the work. Why can't I do 100% automation? Yes, you can do that 100% automation by even letting CloudFormation know that this server is going to be require Apache server, because that's what it is going to be, a web server. It should have Apache server in it. So that's what you define under user data section, that, okay, hey, I don't only need this EC2 instance, but along with this EC2 instance, I need a couple of more utilities, libraries. Can you install that? Which is not just limited to Apache. You can also use Java, Python, any other application in it, whatever you need. With help of shell script or any sorts of additional Python script, you can configure your server. This way it ensures that whenever your EC2 is launched, you have not only just provision or configure, you can also bootstrap and get whatever you need. And at the last, you can version, you can maintain that, or you can track that output with the help of output section. You can track, right? Like, for example, the IP address of the web server. You can track, okay, what was the IP address of that server? What is the URL of that server, or any other details about it? Not just from an EC2, you can do it for all the resources. So that's about most of the section around it. There are a few of them, like metadata. Metadata, as the name suggests, data about data, right? Generally what we refer is. That's exactly correct here also. It will give you more information about your parameter. Generally, let's say, for example, whenever someone X person has written a CloudFormation, it gives it to Y person. Now, if something goes wrong and X is not available, then metadata and those kinds of additional description help the Y person to figure out what you're doing in the CloudFormation. And this metadata is specifically for the parameter section or parameter group. So you can define, okay, here are my sets of parameter, what each one of parameter is responsible for that, and how exactly it is doing it, right? For example, here is given in the EC2 type. So based on that, you define here that, okay, what is exactly EC2 type is, why do you need it, and other kinds of stuff. Mapping, as I talk about that, okay, let's say you want to switch the mapping across region, AMI across region, or let's say on the environment, then you can easily do it with help of the mapping functionality, right? This is based on the region flag, which is an by default functionality in CloudFormation. You can easily switch based on the region. At the last, the most important thing, conditions. So there are multiple conditionals are provided, right? Fn, if, fn equals, and, not, or. These are more like an intrinsic functions which help you to apply conditions, right? For an example, as I was talking about the same, that okay, you have dev environment where you need T2 micro, or in production you need M5X large. So how we can do that? So based off condition, you can define if fn if environment is equal to dev, you launch T2 micro, or if fn if the environment is equal to production, you can launch the higher end of it, right? That's one example. Let's say what you can even do more complex of it. Generally, we don't relaunch like things like S3 database because it stores the data, right? Whenever you update your production deployment, for the first time, the one-time setup, you do S3, DynamoDB, database, and all those stuff. But over a period of time, you don't destroy S3 because it holds the data, and if you do it, it will also lose the data and all it. So how you can only launch the resources, right? So in FN, if you define that if if the environment is production, you skip launching S3, DynamoDB, or let's say Aurora or RDS, right? You only just launch things like EC2 instance, Lambda, and those kinds of stuff. Anything which is more computational and some sort of a stateless kind of a thing. So that kind of complex thing also you can do with FNF. So this is very important when it comes to the cloud formation, like an intelligent way of describing how we can do more condition branching or what kind of resources you should spin up or not. So for an example here, it is given the same standard when you have like prod and test based on equals, you decide that, okay, it's a prod environment, and based on prod, you define what kind of instance you need. Transform, as I talk about, that you already have, let's say S3 bucket kind of stuff where you just define the key value and you can take care of that kind of thing. Enables more of like a reusable kind of stuff. So now moving towards the next. So for far we understood what is template, the 9 objects of template, what different things you can do on template, and those kinds of detail. Now let's understand this third part of it, which is a stack. Stack, as I mentioned, is a very simpler way to understand. It's like a managed in a single unit, a single box where you can just create resources, you can delete it, you can track, update, right? So it's more like a zip file kind of a package, and in the zip file you have different files in it, right? Similarly, it's like a zip file only, and very I mean, if you want to if you want to make a change, you have to unzip it, make a change, and again zip it. Similar exact is the concept of this stack. Whenever you launch a stack, it holds all of your resources, what is defined in the template based on which the stack was created, as well as if you want to make some changes in the stack, you can easily do it. You can update the stack and it will apply on that resources. The application or the implication will be of two types. If it can be something small changes, it can easily apply on the existing resources. In certain times, it has to delete that resources and recreate a new one of it, right? So it depends what kind of changes you're doing around it. If it is a small change, like the small change can be applying a tag to a resource, right? Let's say you have an EC2 instance, you want to apply a tag. In that case, the CloudFormation will apply the tag easily on that same instance. Let's say you're changing an AMI of EC2 instance. In that case, EC2 CloudFormation will destroy the existing EC2 and relaunch a new EC2 with the new AMI. So please watch out. Sometimes I've seen people struggling really hard in such scenarios where they don't know how things are going to apply and they just simply go around it, right? Specifically when it comes to things of database or S3, even small changes which you make a do, right? Any schema changes or something, watch out. In that case, your current DynamoDB table will get destroyed and a new one is going to apply. It's not going to be an incremental change. It's going to be from scratch. So please ensure that what changes you're going to do, you properly track it before you apply those changes. Now, I think I've given you too many information about theory, what is CloudFormation, why it works, how we can define the template and other stuff. Let me quickly go through a quick demo. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my AWS console. Now, this is my AWS console, which I have logged into it. If you're pretty new to this console, don't worry about it. You can easily, first of all, if you don't even have an account, let's say you're very newbie on AWS, AWS provides a free tier for 1 year where you can go launch and play around. Just please watch out that whenever you don't need a resources, either you stop or you destroy or delete it, right? Because it's going to charge you even if you're not using it in the start state. So please take care of the stuff. And let's move to our demo, right? So first, if you are very new around it, you can directly type CloudFormation in the search bar itself. So here, you in the CloudFormation itself, in the service section, you see the CloudFormation is there, where it is written create and manage resources within the template, right? As I spoke about, that what is CloudFormation. Now, the second thing what we'll also need is the templates. So as I mentioned, we already have this template defined, which I'll share in the GitHub repository. You can refer the same template, and I'll also walk you through what exactly and how these templates are developed. So for example, we are here. So this is a stack which you can there, right? You can click on the tag, you can upload the template. This is more like a designer. I'll click and keep it open. You can click on this create tag. Here you can click on the upload, right? So I'll show you. I'm going to go to the local version only. So by default, you saw, right? Whenever I clicked on upload, it file got uploaded, but internally you see the S3 link is generated of the file which you uploaded. So this is the default bucket which CloudFormation creates in your account for a given particular region, right? So this is a template is there. You can, so this is the same URL you will see in the review section. When we will be in the step 4, in the same review section, you will see this CloudFormation template will be referred, not the one which you locally uploaded. So I'll click on next. I'll create demo, right? Now, under demo, you can see that, okay, I've created a demo, then you have this kind of AMI and those kinds of things. And then you can also pass this environments, like 3 range of values are provided: dev, test, prod. We will use, let's say, test. And then I click on next. Here, there are multiple other advanced options, what you can do. You can provide IAM roles. If you want to track the resources, right? You want to get a real-time events and all, you can do those kinds of stuff. Like every event you push a notification, or some sort of a failure you push notification, that kind of thing you can do. Very important thing. CloudFormation by default provides a very important functionality called as rollback. Now, what is rollback is? Either rollback is like an automosity when you have heard about in the database line of it. Either it is going to complete the transaction end to end, or it's going to roll back, or it's going to be switched to the previous state, which is at the ground zero, like at the start. So either it's going to be at the destination or it's going to be the start, right? The target state or the start state. Similar exact the CloudFormation works. Let's say if something goes wrong, like for example, you ran out of the quota or some other issue that occurs, CloudFormation is going to even destroy the resources which it provisioned in that stack. Let's say, for example, you had 3 resources: EC2, S3 bucket, and IAM role. Now, due to some reason, EC2 got failed, and by that time, CloudFormation had already deployed an S3 bucket and IAM role. Now, since EC2 got failed, CloudFormation will start roll backing itself, and as a part of that rollback, it's going to roll back everything. So it's going to destroy the IAM role which was launched. It is going to destroy the S3 bucket which is launched, and then it will say, okay, delete, completed, right? So it's going to roll back everything. So either it's going to be launch everything successfully or destroy everything, right, based on 0. So that's a default behavior is there. Okay, as a part, when you are testing around, when you're writing the template on day 1, you can also preserve successfully provision resources. So if something goes wrong mid state, you can tell CloudFormation, stay there mid state, I will take care of the one, so you can troubleshoot it, right? It's always recommended that in production you have rollback feature enabled. In dev, since you want to troubleshoot, identify what is an issue, you can do preserve success provision state. So rollbacking also, there is an additional way you can do. Let's say if your CloudFormation doesn't get deployed in 10-15 minutes, you can do rollback configuration. And you can also give notification around it. As I mentioned initially, for every launch, okay, this resource got completed, that resource got completed, you can have notification. So you're not sitting constantly watching around, you automatically get a notification around it. So we don't want to make any changes here. We'll say as it is, and we'll click on next. Now, as I spoke about, right, this is the same URL which we saw on the first screen where we specify the template. It didn't use the local one, it used the template URL of the default bucket, as I mentioned. If you go on the cost estimate, one of the important point is CloudFormation as a service is free of cost. Now, for example, you are launching two resources, SageMaker and EMR. You are going to be paying the charges for SageMaker and EMR, but CloudFormation is not going to charge you for the capability to provision that services. CloudFormation will be free, but you have to pay the charges of EMR or SageMaker or any services which get deployed by the CloudFormation. So just be very clear on that. I think many people just get mistaken with that. CloudFormation is a free service, but you have to pay for the resources. Rest will keep as it is. We'll give an acknowledgement since this CloudFormation is launching an IAM role and attaching to EC2 instance, we'll do it. And now I'm creating one click stack. Okay. So now this CloudFormation just compiled, create dependency graph and all of this stuff. And now it start launching the resources. You will see this CloudFormation will roughly take around 2 minutes to finish up the entire thing end to end. In meantime, let it get launched. I'll switch back to the what we launched, right? What is the template all about? What is exactly the template's role? So as I mentioned initially, it's very important. You provide the version from a best practice, description, what exactly you're doing, metadata, where you define about the data type about this, what is there in parameters. In parameters, as I mentioned, we are having two parameters. One is the environment and second is the AMID. Again, this is a very good way of using AMID because it will always use the latest Linux. So I don't have to provide AMID across region and all, but based on the latest AMI in that region, it will pick up. Ensure that you only use this functionality if you're pretty confident that the code, what you're going to use is compatible across all the Linux version. If you're not sure, if you haven't tested it, then please ensure you give a specific AMI where you have tested, because there is a high chance if AMI gets updated, your application will broke. So this is around the parameters. Then this is what you have as a mapping, dev, test, prod. This exactly where you're defining if you have dev environment, then use nano. If it is micro, or if it is test, then use micro. And for prod, use small. We have provided test as an environment, so it should be launching T2 micro. The most important thing here is the resource section where, as I mentioned, you're provisioning, configuring, and bootstrapping the resources. So here you're defining, provisioning and defining what you need for IAM role. Here you're attaching the IAM role in a policy. Here you're launching an EC2 instance where you are doing a bootstrapping. You're just provisioning, configuring it more detailed, like with tags, security groups, IAM role. And here is the bootstrapping, what you're doing, right? The bootstrapping can be simpler to complex. In my example, what I'm doing is a simple thing. First, I'm applying all the latest patch and EC2 instance with yum update. Then I'm installing an Apache server. I'm enabling the start of Apache server. And then I'm launching a PHP LAMP stack, a PHP code, and executing a PHP code in it, which will be crawling the instance metadata and give me the instance ID and the availability zone as an output. So once the CloudFormation is done, when I'll hit the URL of EC2, you will see this output getting print URL and instance zone, instance ID and availability zone on it. And at the last, I'm giving a security group, elastic IP of the instance, and printing the output for it. So if I just close all the section, this is exactly it looks like. You have template version, description, metadata, parameters, mapping, resources, and output. Now, if I go back and if I refresh here, so this is like, it's an event which keeps tracking what exactly the resource is getting launched at every time and all other stuff. If you go in the resource section, you will see in resource wise what exactly got deployed. So by far now you will see the security group got deployed, the EC2 is deployed, the instance profile is deployed, the EC2 is deployed, IAM role is deployed, and the last is just provisioning the elastic IP and will be attaching to the server. The elastic IP is almost done. And this is our elastic IP. If I see the events, the tag is completed successfully. So you can see these are the different events or step it took to complete this tag. Under event section, under resources, you can see what are the different AWS resources it provisioned. Output, as I mentioned, you can track what kind of output of the resources, like URL, or public IP or any sorts of resource name what you want to give. This is the parameter what we provided. This is a template what we provided to AWS to launch, the one with we just had a quick review, right? And this is the stack information, what kind of input you give. So from this console itself, it's very neat and clean. You can track, you can identify, because sometime in a hustle, you give wrong parameter and then it becomes, okay, I don't know what I give. So with the help of console, you can easily track, right? Again, you're launching a stack with, let's say, some Python script with Lambda or CI/CD or manually. End of the day, you're going to see that stack under this AWS CloudFormation console, irrespective whether it's done by any of the APIs, SDK, CLI, or by humans. The CloudFormation will get registered here, and you can track all those information now we can see on our console the same way if you would have even done with some SDK or CLI part of it. There is no difference in that. Now, what I'll do next is I'll go to the output, and I'll click on this URL. And as I mentioned, we can see the instance ID and we can see the availability zone. If you want to verify, you can go into the resources, and under resources, if I click on this instance ID, you can see 0A96. 0A96, this is the instance ID. So this is about a quick demo, like a very basic hello world demo, how you should launch CloudFormation or understanding the CloudFormation console and other details. Let's move next in our presentation. So this is what we have done. Quickly to recap, we launch an EC2 instance, we configure it, we install a web server, PHP in it, then we open a security group, and finally we view the content. I mean, on the browser we saw the instance ID and the availability zone, and this is how the architecture somewhere look like. So this was a quick demo about the hello world. Now let's move to some more advanced concept of CloudFormation, which is the custom resource. So initially, if you remember in the first slide I mentioned, there are some ways where even you can trigger any resources which is residing in any platform on another cloud vendor, or if it is on the on-premise. Custom resource is the same way what you can do, right? With the resources section, you can easily provide or you can configure, play around any of the resources which are there in AWS. But if you, let's say, have a web service which is deployed on-prem and you want to trigger that web service via CloudFormation, for an example, then cloud custom resource can help you, right? Custom resource, as you can see, it's like a CloudFormation invoking a Lambda on behalf of you. And in that Lambda, you define anything, right? Let's say for the very basic or common example, which I've seen is people generally store their credentials in some of their cred store. That cred store is residing on-prem. And whenever you're deploying any new resources, you need this credential. How are you going to do it? If you give it as a plain text, as a parameter, anyone can go and understand that what kind of credit you provided. So that way, what people generally do is they leverage custom resource via CloudFormation. They write a Lambda. In that Lambda, they have an API of that cred store. And at the runtime, based on the parameter, they fetch the credentials and pass that credentials as an output to any of the resources which is required. So this way, they can securely fetch the credentials without passing through parameters and making people know hard coding in the scripts and those kinds of stuff. This is a very complex, simple, and a very easy, most widely used case what I've seen with custom resource. There are another ways also you can do, like specifically retrieving an AMI. Like if your company has patched an AMI and other stuff, then you can retrieve those kinds of AMIs and other things. But this is how it works. You launch a template, you define a custom resource with type as custom, the resource name, and you pass the parameter around it and that whatever it generates, right? So custom resource, how it works is CloudFormation triggers a custom resource with a pre-signed URL. It tells a custom resource that when you are done, please give the response back on this pre-signed URL. When the CloudFormation receive that pre-signed URL, the results can be either a success or a failure. Based on when it receives the URL, it decides the next step. Does it want to fail or does it want to continue the execution? Based on the pre-signed URL, it will take that call. So it's more not an asynchronous way of doing it. It is very synchronized way with help of pre-signed URL. The next one is the most important thing, is a nested stack. Let's say you're building a very complex big data platform, right? An enterprise data lake platform. You'll have multiple things. You will have stack for S3, for your ETL, ingestion pipeline, for your warehouse, for for BI and those kinds of stuff. One way for sure, you can dump everything in one particular CloudFormation, have 5,000 of lines, and you can take care of that, right? Again, no one will really be doing that because it's not readable. It's very complex to maintain. You cannot give that one big stack to anyone to play around with it. So what generally we do it, you chunk it down. Chunk down based on different components. Like one is for ETL, one is for ingestion, one is for data lake, one is for warehouse, one is for BI. And then you whatever the templates you have, you write an orchestration or the parent template. Parent template couples or glue all these kinds of child template, and that's how you deploy or provision the entire enterprise platform. So that's exactly is the done with the nested stack. You define the main orchestration root template. In that root template, you define all the small, all the components of small templates, and root template automatically invokes one after the another all the child templates. For an example, you can see there is a root template at the top level, and at the bottom you have VPC, IAM, and EC2. Now again, you can do everything in one template itself, or you can do another. The advantage is again, some or other way reusability. Tomorrow, if you need another stack of VPC, if you would have glued everything in one template itself, it would be very difficult to only cherry pick VPC and execute that. But now, since you're broken down across different templates, it's very easy that tomorrow, if you need to deploy only VPCs, let's say for some new projects or some requirement task, you can call that one specific template, upload that, and take care of it without worrying about the other mechanism, right? Similar goes for IAM, similar goes for EC2 instance. Like same example, what even I have done, right? The first demo, what we have done was pure, just and simple EC2 instance. Now that same template I've demonstrated, same template I will be using as a nested stack also. So when we'll be launching a nested stack demo, I will not redefine the EC2 instance. I will use the same template, the same file which we have stored as a template, and will put as a part of a stack. So that gives me more reusable, and I don't have to worry about rewriting it again and again for every new application. So now we'll quickly go through the kind of a demo for custom resource first. What we are going to do is we'll have a Lambda of custom resource, which will be copy the artifact from one bucket to another bucket. Before we that, let me quickly walk you through on this particular designer. I missed that out. So this is the designer, CloudFormation designer look like. Let's say for an example, just an example, you can easily drag and drop around this. Okay, so you dragged here a particular resource. You can another connect one another. Let's say, for example, you have the work group. You can easily define like this way. You can drag and drop, and you can define around it. This and again, you can have the templates and all of the stuff like this. If I just okay, so this is how the entire template got created automatically. Now, let's assume I don't even know about it. Neither I've written any single line of code. Automatically, with help of the designer, you can see this coming out, right? As well as you can also define it in YAML format. And then this is the best way of even somehow documenting it, right? So sometimes I've seen people, what they do is, let's say, for example, open local file. Okay. So this way you can also, let's say I had a template at my end, right? The one which we deployed. This is the same template I took here, I uploaded, and this becomes my blueprint diagram or architecture diagram. Also, I can refer quickly that this is how my execution will look like. I have an elastic IP which get attached to instance server. Then I have IAM role, security group, instance profile, which will get tagged, right? So my instance IAM role will get moved to instance profile to web server, and then so this is another way of even extracting a logical diagram of your existing YAML. That also you can do easily. And once you're done, you can click on this upload arrow, which will create the tag. So as I mentioned, designer is used for designing the templates, not for the resources runtime. So now once this entire template is done, I can click on this upload, which will request CloudFormation that whatever the template has been designed, you go and do it. Or you can also download this. You can save this as a form of a template, put it into your GitLab, and you can reuse as a kind of a code. So those all operation what you can do in the form of a designer. So we'll go here and I'll go to the S3 bucket. So again, the same thing, either if you're pretty new, you can search from that search bar, or you can directly click and look up the resource. Okay, so these are the two buckets which I'll use: CFT demo destination bucket, CFT demo source bucket. Let's first understand what is exactly there in each of the buckets around it. So if I go and open destination bucket, it should be an empty one. If not, then we'll make it empty. Okay, so this is a very clean empty bucket, right? There is nothing in it. Now I'll click on the source bucket. So in the source bucket, you can see there is code, and under code, there is a CloudFormation.yaml file. So what I'm going to do is I'll go back to the CloudFormation console, click on create stack with new resources. Okay, here you need to provide the kind of a detail here. Like for example, this is a bucket name. So this is the file name what we need to give. Like you can give multiple objects. We are giving as one. The source bucket name. Please ensure whenever you're passing the parameters for any of the application, if you're manually doing it, provide the right bucket name. I mean the right parameters. So I've given CFT demo destination bucket source bucket, and I'll click on next. The process still remains the same. There is no change in the way you launch the CloudFormation, irrespective of whatever you're trying to launch. So you will see one small difference around the way we launch a EC2 CloudFormation. It took us 2 minutes or so. And now when we will launching the Lambda, it will take like almost half a minute, right? First, there is no difference in the CloudFormation. It doesn't mean CloudFormation is fast or slow. It purely depends on the resources which you launch as a part of the CloudFormation, right? Lambda, as we know, is a serverless function as a service. So it has to be very fast. It doesn't boot up and all those things, right? Whereas EC2 instance take its own time because it virtualize, boot, launch OS, and other thing. So it's directly proportional to the resources what you launch. CloudFormation takes the same equivalent time for all the resources from their end. So now it just took like almost 1 second, 1.5 second, like to finish that up. Whereas in EC2 instance, it's over 2 minutes. So if I go up, I mean, as I mentioned, this is going to copy the entire code and the file from the source to destination bucket. So what I'm going to do is I'll go towards the destination bucket directly. And as you can see, this bucket was empty, and you can have the file copy. This was a very small demo, I would say, where we have launched the entire stuff, right? You can do very complex of it, right? You can back up the S3 bucket from one region to another, or you can download the threads, or you can get the AMI, CIDR. There are many other ways you can leverage this functionality, but this is a very simple narration of how exactly the custom resource work around it. So that's what we had from today's demo. If I switch back, right? So if I go back at the top and quickly recap what we have done. So we understood all the whys. Why do we need a CloudFormation? These are 5 things what we understood around it. We understood what is exactly the CloudFormation, the example of Expedia, what is CloudFormation, templates, CloudFormation and stack. We even saw a demo around it, understood in a very groom way, that in a granular way how things work. Behind the scene, what exactly are the Lego brick way CloudFormation executes different functionalities, features on the template, and get the stack live up and running. The concepts around template, the 9 objects, please ensure resources is a mandatory thing. Rest other templates will help you to get the best practices or make your template generic that you can run across regions and accounts. The structure of the templates, Then what are each of those 9 objects can help you to do that. Then what is tag, how exactly you can create, update this tag. Then we saw a demo around it. We went to advanced concept where you learn about the custom resource, the way you can also reach out to the resources outside AWS environment, the nested stack, and then we had a demo of the custom resource. So that's about from today's session. Hope you had a good learning curve. And as well as if you have any doubts around CloudFormation, what other enterprise or complex application you can build, you can put it on the chat or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. We can have a discussion offline about the same. Thank you guys for hearing me out and spending your wonderful time from this weekend.
Thank you so much, Sanchit. It was really a great session with the demo. So I really like the way you started from the basics, right? For anyone who are very new to CloudFormation or even infrastructure as a code, you started the way very starting level, and then you went up to the demo level. I hope like all the participants and whoever like to see this recorded session would really get more benefits from this session. Thank you so much for your presentation today, and we wish you'll be like providing more other areas from AWS services you have in upcoming sessions next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to show a few other upcoming sessions we have. So next week Saturday, we have a session called "How to Build, Train, Deploy Machine Learning Model in SageMaker." So this is another very interesting session. If you are either a beginner or even if you are a practitioner in AWS SageMaker, this session is going to really help you. Please check out the availability and book your time in meetup.com in the AWS user group page. And following by that, next year we are starting with create a smart doorbell with AWS serverless. That's coming. The first session in the year 2022 will be provided by Puddu Jayavardhana. Please go and sign up for the same session as well. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And I hope you all liked the day today and you had a very good informative session. Thank you all. Thank
Thank you.
you. Bye.